Shawn, good to see you, buddy.
Absolutely.
So, super fascinated by this. I love learning about all things bass, and we're going to go through the spawning process in captivity.
That's right.
So we're starting here. All these are pre-spawn females?
These are pre-spawn females, and this is northern bass, and we're 75% through the season already. We actually ran out of pond space, so we paused spawning, and then we'll get back up as soon as we get some ponds open and available. But the interesting thing is these females will not drop their eggs on a smooth surface. So we can keep these girls up for a long time and then go back out there. So
Perfect.
one of the big parts of us spawning, and we'll do 6-7 million fry this year, is that we have clients that want pure northerns, pure Floridas, and then of course our tiger bass, which is a mix.
Right.
So to keep track of all that, we pit tag our fish and send them off for genetic sampling. It's a big ordeal, it's a pain, but we got to do it. So if Barry, if you'll hand us that fish. So you can see this female still has her eggs. And if we read it, that pit tag number, it's a 16-digit number. We put it in the computer and we can search and we verify that this is a northern bass. So we have to do that on all our fish. And of course our tiger bass are a cross between a Florida and a northern.
So every one of these fish has an individual number, just like a cattle ear tag.
Absolutely. And we have to bring in new fish every year because spawning is hard on big fish. And so we have to test them before we use them. So doing the pit tag and tracking everything is a big part of who we are and how we're able to offer the fish that we offer. And the next big part, you notice the goldfish in here. We feed these girls goldfish all spring to keep them fat. And those nutrients really help their egg development and means we get better survival out in the ponds with the fry.
Cool.
So we probably have 3 weeks left of this. We'll get them out in ponds. We'll get a few more fry. And then we'll start talking about the fry stage, then the fingerling stage. One of the big topics we have is we raise a lot of feed train bass because the only way to get them over 2 inches and get them, because people want a bigger bass because they're worried something's going to eat them when you stock them in existing ponds. We know that's not true from our Kentucky Lake experience, but just to put their mind at ease, people worry that if they start on feed, they don't go back. So we're going to throw some feed out to these guys, see if they're hungry. They like feed. Let me tell you, they also really like goldfish. So you cannot take this instinct out of these bass. It doesn't matter how long they are on feed, they're always going to go back. Because you and I both know we'd rather have a steak than cereal.
Of course, of
so
course.
These guys absolutely love it. We always talk about bluegill being the base of the food chain for bass. And that is 100% true. If you're stocking your pond and you have a limited budget, always put it in bluegill. But the next step up is threadfin shad. And we love these guys. You can see these guys, they swim in a circle, they're schooling fish, and bass can ambush them. You know, you'll see schools of bass going at them. They're really high in oils and different things, so it's another great food source for bass. The other nice thing is these guys are usually out in the middle of the lake utilizing a part of the food chain that the bluegill aren't. I mean, bluegill are usually feeding around the edges.
Right.
And these guys are filter feeding out in the middle. So you're being able to utilize a whole nother source, create more protein, and grow bigger bass. The only negative to threadfin shad is that they wake up every morning trying to figure out how to die. They are the hardest thing to work with, hardest thing to ship. But if your lake needs that extra push, this is the go-to.
Always threadfin, no gizzards?
I like gizzards in specific situations. You know, everybody sees that gizzards can get so big. So if you're already at or near trophy status in your pond, you can handle them. I never start a new pond with gizzards.
Just they get too big in the basket.
They get bad. Some lakes have great success with them, others don't.
Gotcha.
Threadfin is safe, but if you are really trying to push it, you know, an 8-pound bass would really love to eat that gizzard that big, you know, and so there's pluses and minuses. You're always safe with threadfin.
We saw the pre-spawn females, how we feed them, all that. Now it's time to actually get some fry and spawn these things. What do we do?
Right, so we're lucky. Our well water is the right temperature to spawn bass. So we actually start March 7th every year. I think we picked the 7th for luck. I don't know. But we start on the 7th every year, so we're spawning in tanks. So we'll pair the fish up, we'll put these spawning mats in there, and so the males will move around and they'll pick a mat and they'll guard it. And the females just cruise around till they find the one they like, and then she'll broadcast her eggs on the mat and he'll fertilize them. And the most interesting thing is, if there's no mat in there, they won't spawn. They will not spawn on a smooth surface. So once we see the eggs, and we collect them every 2 days because we want them to be about the same age, so when they go to the ponds, they don't eat each other. So we bring these mats inside, put them in these cages, and within the week, these fish are swimming, and this is actually the size we stock our ponds with. So these fry are, on average, 300 of them in a gram. And so we're putting in about 100,000 to the acre. So we're really putting out a lot of bass out there.
What's the survival rate from here to fingerling?
We aim for 50. Some days we're surprised, sometimes we're angry, you know. We used to weigh these out to get a more accurate count so we knew exactly what was happening, but we realized that was more stress. So now we're eyeballing it, you know, 80,000, okay. You know, and so having the exact number, we don't know, but we've gotten to where if we know how many mats go in here, kind of how it looks, we've got a good estimate. I'd rather have live fish than accurate numbers.
So and then you're literally putting these in big ponds.
So most of our ponds are about 1.5 acres, and we fertilize them heavily. Every week with cottonseed meal, you need something organic to really grow the zooplankton.
Because these, obviously these aren't big enough to eat a spinnerbait.
No, not quite yet. Give them a week or two. But they have enough yolk that they can make a few days, but you've got to make sure there's something they can eat. And they're eating those bugs, you know, and that's why most ponds you see are green. That's an inorganic fertilizer. And that's kind of the bloom. We want a zooplankton bloom, which is usually brown, so that we have lots and lots of bugs. And that, it takes a whole lot. We're putting out 3 tons a week, easy, spread out in these ponds.
Wow. Just regular NP&K granular fertilizer?
No, this is cottonseed meal. This is organic. You know, our Perfect Pond Plus is inorganic, and that's what we use on ponds that we manage, because out there you're kind of pushing everything. With the zooplankton, we have a short window to make sure we have as many of those guys for them to eat, and this is the way to do it.
Okay.
It takes about 8 weeks in the pond, and this little guy is going to be 2 inches long.
In 8 weeks?
In 8 weeks.
Wow.
So bass season's really, really hectic. You know, we will spawn, you know, 7 million fry, get them out. We'll have to turn ponds over twice, so it's a constant thing. And, you know, at the end of the day, we hope to harvest about 2 million. So I'll let you know in a couple weeks, because we're coming to Kentucky Lake.
So these bass here could be the ones that we're putting in Kentucky Lakes in a few weeks.
Well, yours are already in the pond, because we want to make sure they're nice and big when we're ready to go.
Okay.
So, but yeah, this is what the customer's getting. You know, we tell them June. They stock their new pond before March. The bluegill, the fatheads, the shad, they've all reproduced. So when that 2-inch bass gets in there, they have all they need to eat, and they'll take off and grow.
That's cool. So I guess we're at step 3 kind of the process right now, and this is really the last thing you do before you harvest them, right?
That's right. So one of the main things that we have to do, as I mentioned, we have to fertilize every week. You can see this in bright green. It's a nice brown color, and that's really what we're after for that zooplankton. So our guys once a week will come out here, pull the net. We call it fry seining. And they're going to look at the length of the bass. They're going to look at the health of the bass, whether it's fat or skinny, and that tells us if we need more fertilizer. They're going to look for algae, because that becomes a big problem when we're harvesting. And when you're fertilizing this much, everything likes to grow, whether it's weeds, algae, or fish. So like I said before, it's going to take us about 6 to 8 weeks, depending on temperature, to get these things up to 2 inches. But watching the fry seine and seeing what's going, it also tells us what we're going to be able to harvest and when we can start a new pond and what we can do. So it's a big key in really tracking where we are and what we're doing.
So will you drain these ponds, you know, almost empty to get all the fry out of them?
No, we seine them full. So we will pull this pond twice.
Okay.
Pull the net through it twice full, and we'll drain it, because we know we're going to catch 90–95%. We're just that good.
Okay.
So on the other side of the farm, we have kettles. And so that's a concrete basin in the bottom. So we'll pull it when it's full once, and then we'll kettle it. And all the water and the fish come into this concrete basin, and we scoop them out. And that's one reason we know we're not losing a lot here, because even on the first pull, we're getting 85%.
Oh, wow. So those same, this right here is just basically to get a sample.
Right.
And then when you're actually harvesting, you're going to have a net that goes completely across it.
Yeah, we have a 300-foot net on a hydraulic reel, and it starts in one corner, comes around, meets in the other corner. We reel it back up into a small pocket, harvest them out, and load them on the truck.
And then that's when they come to my pond, your pond, whoever's.
That's right. So we sell probably 90% of our fish at 2 inches straight out of the pond. The other 10% we feed train for those folks that want the 8-inch bass or whatever they want. And that's usually, it's an existing pond and they're scared about putting a 2-inch bass in there and not getting enough survival. And so we feed train them, we sell them at that larger size. But I can't afford and I don't have the space to raise them on bluegill. So that's when we start the feed training process.
Gotcha. How long does it take to get those 2 inches to 8 inches in feed trained?
Feed train, if I'm lucky, September.
Okay.
8 inches probably October. It's just, we don't have the space to do it in tanks, so you have to put them in the ponds. And then, you know, you're feeding in 100-degree weather, so your feed efficiency and all that goes down. You're dealing with low oxygen in the morning, all these different stressors. So it's a lot better, in my opinion, to stock a 2-inch fish that's ready to go as early as possible in the springtime when everything's good. Go eat your bluegill, go eat your shad. We've been very successful in lakes with the bigger fish. They do it. I mean, they grow. We saw today, they'll still eat bluegill and everything else. So both are good options. I'm just partial to the 2-inch because I really like to get it in there, get it in the spring, and get that big boost of growth that first year.
Gotcha.